Well, hi there, little Rose.
What?
Is that you? Oh! What the fuck was that?
I'm coming, Papa Bear.
Really well-crafted, well-developed, and well-designed survival horror games don't come by as often as they used to, but it's times like these that I'm glad Capcom still knows how to make fantastic Resident Evil games. To keep it brief, I absolutely loved playing Resident Evil Village, even more than 7, obviously more than 3 Remake, and probably about as much as 2 Remake. But there are a few issues that I had with it that keep it from potentially being my favorite in the whole series, and for that, well, if you've seen my Outer Worlds and Ghost of Tsushima reviews, 2 games I loved to death, flaws and all, I think you know where this is headed. Time to call upon my recessive twin, Doppelgangertard. Take it away, DGT.
Thanks, Darian. Hello, everyone. Dr. Gangertard is in the house. I also followed Darian's lifestyle and got myself glasses too, although they feel a little funny. I might have to get them resized. Anyway, for this year's episode of Nitpicker's Guide to the Galaxy, we're taking a special look into the flaws of an otherwise exceptional new entry to the Resident Evil series, Resident Evil Village. First off, you still don't see Ethan Winters' face after all this time. What gives? Does he not even have a face? What is he, the unwanted son of Slender Man? Next, the pacing of the game is a little off. Most of it involves you going to this part of the village, killing this boss, collecting a piece of that thing, and then rinse and repeat at least 4 times. The rhythm can start feeling a little repetitive, therefore making the game feel a little longer than it really is. Sometimes bigger enemies can clip through walls. Peekaboo, I see you. Some enemies can also feel like bullet sponges, even when repeatedly hitting their weak spots. In a survival game where you have to conserve everything you have, there is no excuse for this. Next, the puzzles. Puzzles are very plentiful in this game, as they should be in any good Resident Evil, but a few of them are very vague, and when you finally figure one out and realize how simple it was, it can make you feel like, well, someone like me. A couple are even frustrating, like this final labyrinth puzzle. It's just straight up awful. I guess you could say they really dropped the ball here. Lastly, similar to Resident Evil 7, this game starts off pretty creepy, but then hits maximum overdrive action during the last couple hours. It goes from being Resident Evil Village to Call of Duty Monster Warfare. Check those corners. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoy the rest of this review. I also hope to see you all again in another 9 months. Maybe my brain will be more developed by then. But for now, I shall disintegrate back into my particle form and mist back up into the attic. Don't tell anyone about my special powers now. Bye!
Huh. That was weird. Should I, be a little worried about that? Nah, who cares? Hey, maybe I should call him Alucard from now on. You know, like Alucard from Castlevania, only stupid. No. On to the praise. Resident Evil Village takes place 3 years after the events of 7. Ethan's wife Mia gets shot, his daughter Rose gets taken away, he gets knocked the fuck out, awakens in a remote European village populated by lichens controlled by a crazed cultist leader, and goes on a desperate suicide mission to get his daughter back, all while trying to figure out what the hell is going on there and what these freaks want with Rose. I don't want to spoil anything too important, so it's harder to really go into more detail than that, but shit just gets crazier and crazier. Nothing is what it seems at all, and it ultimately climaxes into what might possibly be the most shocking plot twist in the entire history of Resident Evil. There's no way I could have seen that coming, but it's so obvious in hindsight, and I'm all the happier for it. I overall love the main story arc in this game way more than I did with 7, although Ethan, still not much more of a likable main protagonist than he was before. Chris Redfield, on the other hand, God, I'm so happy he's in this game. He's as cool a guy as he ever was. A real certified badass. I also love that they redesigned his face back to how he looked in 5 and 6. Aged, but still in great shape. His brief appearance in 7 looked way too young to even be Chris. I will say that everyone who were misled by Capcom into believing Lady Dimitrescu would be like the main villain will find themselves disappointed after months of online sexual obsession to discover that she's only in the game for a couple of hours. Literally, just the castle part. They really did pull an RE4 Menendez on us again. Only just one of many major antagonists, and not even that far up the food chain either. The real supervillain star of this game is Heisenberg. No, not him. Him. That's the real interesting antagonist right there. I also feel like Lady Dimitrescu would have been a lot scarier if not for the perversion of the media. It's harder to take her seriously because of all that. I mean, she's not really that frightening to begin with. Oh my god. Shit. Well, that was certainly unexpected. I really like her AI though. She can be very unpredictable and is unscripted, much like Mr. X from 2 Remake, wandering her castles trying to find you and cut you to pieces. Man, sometimes I forget how tall she really is. You'll run into her daughters every so often as well, and the game has a little bit of stealth that can be used for those occasions, but like I said, this is just a fraction of the whole game. My fair lady, I'm sorry you were cut so short, unlike your height. The boys loved ya, so don't be too mad.
No wire hangers ever!
Most people are considering this game to be more deprived of horror than 7, and I somewhat agree. I say somewhat because there are those who are bashing it saying that it's not scary at all, are either full of shit and haven't even played it, or messed up in the head so much that they weren't effectively shaken by this fucking monstrosity. Yeah, so here's the thing. When I get so scared in a video game moment like this, where I instinctually do exactly what I'm supposed to do in a scripted event like this, which is to hide, I'd say that's a job well done on the fear gauge. This was by far the single creepiest moment, this freaking fetus monster. I'll admit that the rest of this game is nowhere near as horrifying as that one part. In defense of Resident Evil Village, though, I do believe the game maintained a perfect balance of creepy atmosphere and tension, as well as thrilling action and fun fights. The whole vampire and lichen thing for the enemies does seem a little fairy tale-ish for a Resident Evil game at first. Hell, the very first thing you see when starting the game is this Tim Burton-looking fairy tale bedtime story that Mia is reading to Rose. But the more you read the notes and lore found as you explore, the more of an understanding you have with the way some inhabit those traits from the virus in the game. And speaking of lore, that portion is handled incredibly well in this one. There are also some hidden areas found off the beaten path that can be both wondrous and chilling. Exploration-wise, this may be my favorite open-ended Resident Evil experience so far. There are so many different key items that are used to unlock different parts of the village, and to also use on other objects that you previously couldn't interact with. There are plenty of shortcuts to unlock, and being able to sort of connect one area to another almost reminded me of playing a Dark Souls game. On the map, it shows you buildings and rooms that are labeled red as incomplete or blue as cleared, letting you know which area has something you haven't already picked up. This makes it really easy and convenient to do a thorough collectible run. I left a lot of places red, mostly because I didn't feel like dealing with enemies on my ass while trying to figure out what I was missing. Unfortunately, a couple big areas become impossible to revisit immediately after you leave, and you'd have to wait until New Game Plus to collect everything there. Let's finally move on to the core gameplay. Oh my god, I'm in love. I've had so much fun. The controls are very similar to Resident Evil 7, in which it's a first-person shooter with few but uniquely varied weapons, like a couple of handguns, a couple of different shotguns, a sniper rifle, a grenade launcher with explosive and flash rounds, and of course, you gotta have the Magnum. There are also a couple of gun modifications you may come across as well. You can craft different things like ammo, meds, and explosive weapons like pipe bombs and mines. I may have had a little too much fun with the mines, sneaking up on werewolves, planting a mine, and then just have it step on it as it's coming at me. It gave me a lot of tools at my disposal to sort of set up strategies, depending on the enemies or bosses I am facing. Speaking of which, fantastic job at giving us an impressive amount of enemy and boss variety, Capcom. 7 severely lacked in that department, but you really delivered it here. Thank you for listening to that feedback. These zombie cyborg things later on look like something you would fight in a Quake or Wolfenstein game. Actually, this whole area in general gave me major Doom 3 vibes.
Bruh.
I was stoked to find out how many aspects of Resident Evil 4 were brought back for this game, such as rewards for killing enemies or specific valuables from killing bosses, shootable minor treasures, and combinable treasures, and you can trade them all to the game's merchant, the Duke, in exchange for supplies that can vary from new weapons to gun mods, as well as being able to upgrade your current arsenal. He also sells craftable supplies such as ammo and first aid, but I really don't recommend buying items you can craft yourself, as you'll likely find plenty of scrap, gunpowder, and chem fluid throughout. And lastly, the inventory system. Yes! They finally brought it back! A new addition is being able to hunt animals for ingredients and give them to the Duke to make you special meals that give you permanent stat increases, like your max health and resilience. I actually like the Duke as a side character. He has a surprising amount of investment with you and the game story as a whole, and gives off a very endearing personality to me. I really like him.
Oh, Lady Dimitrescu. Beautiful even in death. That waistline, yes.
I was able to clear my first playthrough in just under 10 hours, but keep in mind I did miss a lot of stuff as I said earlier. If you're very thorough at turning every map completely blue, I'd expect it to take you at least 15 hours. Maybe I'll do a complete collectible run on New Game Plus. Similar to recent Resident Evil games, beating it for the first time opens up the extra content shop. Here you can buy new powerful weapons, infinite ammo for any gun you fully upgraded, figures, and a ton of concept art, as well as a super cheap ticket into Mercenaries Mode, which I'll get to in a second. There's also the challenge page where you can view challenges you have already fulfilled, as well as progress bars for how close you are to farming them out. Doing these rewards you with completion points that are used for the extra content shop, and I cannot wait to tackle a lot of these in my next run. It should be a ton of fun. Last but not least, the Mercenaries Mode. I believe that this is the first in the series since Revelations 2 6 years ago, I could be wrong, to have a sort of raid mode that involves you going through multiple rounds of a stage, killing as many enemies as fast as possible before the timer runs out, while also trying to string up as high of a kill combo as you can. You also visit the Duke at the start and in between each round. I am not that good at it so far, at least not quite good enough to unlock the next stage, but I'm still practicing with it. The brilliant thing about Mercenaries are the blue orbs that gives you a choice of upgrades based on your style of play. You can only have a few upgrades active at the same time, so you'll have to decide what to replace for the other. This grants a very adaptive playstyle, which I find pretty ingenious. I can totally see myself getting hooked to this mode alone for days. I'm reaching the conclusion of my review. All I'll say is Resident Evil Village was a blast to play. It may not have been nearly as scary as 7 or 2 Remake, but it nevertheless presented a really perfect blend of tension, dread, and action and excitement. There were times when I flat out fooled around with certain enemies because the game gave me the freedom to do so. It's probably the most fun I've had in the series since, God, Resident Evil 4? I've also been hearing other minor complaints from many experienced players that the standard difficulty also felt a little too easy, at least compared to the standard of 7, and I can kind of see where they're coming from. Supplies and ammo do seem a bit more plentiful in this game. I also only died once on a fair fight, and it was during the last boss. So I'd say that's a little on the easy side, but I did feel it getting particularly more challenging when reaching the last major area. So if you're an RE vet and want an appropriate challenge for the first time around, I'd say, yeah, go for hardcore. My final score for Resident Evil Village is a 9 out of 10. It probably would have even gotten a 10 if not for the repeated mistake of delving more on the action side towards the end. Regardless, this is an absolute must-play for Resident Evil and survival horror fans alike. It's not the scariest out there, but it is one of the most solid and well-made, and an immediate improvement over 7 in almost every important way. It's fun as hell, has a good length, has a rich amount of quality replay value. It's a bit goofy at times, but does still know when to be an intense game. In my opinion, this is one of the best Resident Evil games to date, and is well worth the full price admission. Which is far more than what I said about last year's 3 remake. Jesus Christ.
The Gamer Gods!
Get off my car, bird shit.